The people who underestimate themselves the most are often the ones with the sharpest minds. Nobody told you that you were intelligent. Maybe the opposite happened. You were called too quiet, too sensitive, too much in your head. You watched louder people get the credit. You sat in rooms where everyone seemed more confident, more certain, more comfortable than you. And somewhere along the way, you accepted a version of yourself that was smaller than the truth. What you are about to hear is going to challenge that version directly, not with motivation, not with empty encouragement. With the actual patterns, the ones researchers have documented, the ones that show up again and again in people who are genuinely sharp but never recognized as such. The first sign is one most people would never connect to intelligence at all. You second-guess your decisions. You replay conversations. You wonder if what you said came out wrong, if what you did was right, if you missed something important. Most people read that as insecurity. It is not. David Dunning and Justin Kruger spent years researching how people assess their own ability. Their finding was clear. People who know the least tend to overestimate themselves the most. People who know the most tend to underestimate themselves because they are aware enough to see their own gaps. The self-doubt you carry is not a sign that you are behind. It is a sign that your mind is calibrated well enough to know what it does not know. That is not common. That is actually rare. Certainty is easy when you do not know enough to be uncertain. Real intelligence knows exactly how much it is missing, and that same awareness shapes something else about you, something that gets misread every single time. In group conversations, you hold back. You listen more than you talk. You let others fill the silence while you process what is actually being said. People take that as shyness. Some take it as disinterest. A few have probably called you arrogant for not contributing more. None of those readings are accurate. Research published in the Journal of Personality and Social Psychology found that higher cognitive ability consistently correlated with active listening over active speaking. The pattern was not shyness, it was information gathering. Highly intelligent people speak after they have something worth saying, not to fill space. The person who talks the most in a room is rarely the one who understood it the best. You probably already knew that. You have watched it happen too many times. Silence in a sharp mind is not emptiness. It is the sound of something being processed that most people skip straight past. But there is a cost to all that processing. It shows up somewhere most people never expect. Simple choices take longer than they should. What to order, which route to take, whether to send the message or wait. Other people decide in seconds. You are still weighing options they never considered. This is called decision fatigue amplification, and it runs heavier in people with higher working memory. Your brain does not take shortcuts easily. It runs the full calculation every time. That is exhausting. It also means you catch things that fast thinkers walk right past. The person who agonizes over a decision is not being indecisive. They are being thorough in a way that most minds simply are not equipped to sustain. The cost is real, so is the advantage it produces. The slowest decision in the room is sometimes the only one that actually accounted for what mattered. Now here is something that will feel uncomfortably familiar. Conversations that excite everyone else leave you flat. Topics that everyone finds interesting feel thin to you. You sit in social situations and feel a quiet distance, not hostility, just a gap between what is happening and what you actually want from an interaction. You have probably spent years thinking something is wrong with you for feeling that way. Psychologist Letta Hollingworth studied intellectually advanced individuals throughout the early 20th century. She found that the greater the gap between a person's cognitive ability and those around them, the more pronounced the sense of social disconnection, not because of personality, but because shared, intellectual ground was genuinely hard to find. That feeling of not quite fitting is not rejection. It is not a flaw. It is the natural result of operating at a frequency that most environments were not built to accommodate. Feeling out of place your whole life is not evidence that something is wrong with you. It is often evidence of the opposite. And that brings us to something that happened long before you were old enough to name it. You were the child who watched more than they played. Who asked questions adults did not know how to answer? Who felt things in a room before anyone had said anything out loud? Teachers sometimes called it daydreaming. Parents called it oversensitivity. Classmates probably called it weird. What it actually was a nervous system running at a higher resolution than the people around you were equipped to understand. Researcher Kazimierz Dabrowski documented this in gifted individuals across decades of work. He called it psychomotor, sensory, and intellectual overexcitability. In plain language, more input coming in, more being registered, more being stored. Children with this profile are not difficult. They are processing at a depth that most educational environments were never designed to reach. The child who is too much grew into the adult who still feels too much. That has never been a problem. It has always been the point. Being called too sensitive as a child was never a diagnosis. It was a failure of the people around you to understand what they were actually looking at. And all of that history shapes one final thing, the most important one on this list. Not in the dramatic way, not in a way anyone could easily see. Just a quiet, persistent sense that the version of you on the inside does not match what gets recognized on the outside. You have done things well and immediately moved past them. You have received compliments and dismissed them. You have looked at your own work and seen only what it was missing. That pattern has a name. Psychologist Pauline Clance identified it in the 1970s and called it impostor phenomenon. It appears most frequently in high-achieving, high-ability individuals, people who set internal standards so precise that external validation rarely reaches them. The imposter feeling is not proof that you are faking. It is proof that your internal standards are higher than what most people ever hold themselves to. That gap between where you are and where you think you should be, that gap is not failure. That gap is the engine. The people who feel most like imposters are often the ones doing the most real work. The actual imposters stopped questioning themselves a long time ago. So when you look at all of this together, what is the real picture? The self-doubt that looks like weakness. The silence that looks like shyness. The slow decisions that look like indecision. The social distance that looks like coldness. The sensitivity that was called a problem. The quiet sense of never quite being enough. None of it was what people said it was. All of it was the signature of a mind that was working at a level the people around you were not positioned to recognize. You were not too much. You were not too slow. You were not broken or behind or wrong for feeling the way you felt. You were just in the wrong rooms, being measured by the wrong standards, by people who did not have the tools to see what was actually there. That does not require an apology from anyone. It just requires you to stop using their measurement as yours. If this landed in a way that surprised you, the next video goes further. It covers why intelligent people feel like they do not belong anywhere, and the specific psychology behind that feeling. Link is right here. Subscribe if this is the kind of content that actually reaches you, and start giving yourself the credit you have been handing to everyone else.